invite Madam to talk about the mystery of non-suicidal self-injury in adolescence. Over to you, ma'am.
થેન્ક યુ અમૃતાબેન. આ 20 મિનિટનું સેશન છે, 17 મિનિટ બતાવે છે. Yeah. So, very good morning to all of you. And as a host, I welcome you all to the DollarScore 2025. We are very thankful to all of you for joining us for this mega event. So, friends, this girl, last year in a hot summer, this girl presented at the clinic with a history of menstrual irregularity. She was looking withdrawn, and the surprising thing was she was wearing a full attire. Surat is very hot in summer. She was wearing full attire, full sleeve shirt and all that. And she was a bit reluctant to fold her sleeves while taking blood pressure. And I happened to see some of the cut marks on her forearm. And, with the permission of her mom and, after rapport building, confidentiality assured, during HADS, she revealed that she often cuts her forearm, and sometimes these cuts are made on the legs as well, because she wants to get rid of the painful emotional memories of a very little accident which took away her father's life. She is very clear that she is not intending to end her life. There is no suicide intent. Her mother says that she is doing that to escape from the household duties. There was a boy who had multiple cuts on his abdomen, and he revealed that I do this because I am not able to bear the self-guilt of having a sexual encounter with my girlfriend under the influence of alcohol. A daughter of a medico couple, they are known to me. I observed a cut mark on her wrist. And when I asked her, she said, Auntie, we have half of the girl in my class have done so because our head girl has done so. And we all want to be in her good book. So what are these non-suicidal self-injury? One thing was common. Nobody wanted to end their life. So what are these non-suicidal self-injury? What are the reasons behind it? What are the functions? How do we approach these cases? How do we present? How does this case present? And how do we manage it? Let us unfold the mystery. So NSSI is a repeated, direct, deliberate self-inflicted injuries to the body using methods which are not socially or culturally sanctioned and without intent to kill oneself. So here, this definition excludes those culturally accepted injuries like ear piercing, tattooing, right? And and those indirect injuries like alcohol consumption, they know that it's going to harm their body, but still they consume it. So this definition excludes those things as well, which are done for an enjoyment purpose. Mostly the teens hurt themselves to, as a coping mechanism to get, control over overwhelming emotional distress. Right? But there is some correlation with suicidal behavior, which we will discuss later. Commonly, cutting, burning, pressing the nail bed, scratching, bumping, even interfering with the wound healing, these are some of the methods used, and cutting leads the list. So NSSI is a repetitive behavior because there is a cycle going on. The adolescent facing overwhelming emotions just want to get rid of that instantly, does the physical injury to divert her mind from the emotional pain to physical pain. And he or she gets instant relief. After some time, there is a huge burden of self-guilt and shame bearing upon him or her. And to get rid of that burden again, he enters into NSSI. So the cycle goes on. What are the DSM-5 criteria? Engaging in intentional self-injury 5 or more days during past year without suicide intent by using methods which are not culturally or socially sanctioned. There should be significant functional impairment at one or multiple level, and it is actually not occurring exclusively during the phases of psychosis, intoxication, or withdrawal, because during this period, the frequency of NSSI increases. There should be at least one of the three. Either there should be a severe emotional distress, interpersonal problem preceding NSSI, or there can be premeditation, yeah? Premeditation like, planning for NSSI and all that, or preoccupation with the NSSI thoughts, continuous. This, in revised criteria, this criteria has been incorporated in borderline personality disorder. The criteria remains the same. Typically, NSSI behavior begins by middle adolescence. 12 to 15 years is the common age. The peak is between 14 to 24. Earlier onset is associated with severe and prolonged course. It has been, the various studies show that around 15 to 20% of the adolescent, they report at least one episode of NSSI. And around 18% of them have repeated episodes during past 6 months. Typically, there are personality traits like low self-esteem leads the list. Poor communication technique, skills, poor coping skills. These are common factors behind that. And of course, those children who are impulsive are more engaged in such behavioral pattern. There are certain adolescent-specific characteristics which make them more vulnerable to non-suicidal self-injurious behavior. The one is, as it has been discussed in detail, the asynchronous neurobiological development, wherein limbic system develops fully and early, making them highly sensitive, impressionable, and impulsive, while the impulse control center develops by mid-20s. So there is a disparity. So and above all, there is a fully developed reward system. So उनको हर एक चीज का instant solution चाहिए, which is not possible. They are facing overwhelming situations and emotions. At that point of time, they are under hot cognition. They have a verbal limitation as well. They are not able to express their feelings in their words. Right. So this all together leads to frustration, anger, despair. And to get out of that feeling, instant feeling, they cut or divert to the NSSI, which surprisingly give them instant relief. The majority of them report that we feel relieved and we can concentrate more after doing this. So they, turn to NSSI out of this. Now, there are certain studies which have shown correlation between NSSI and suicidal behavior. NSSI is one of the strong risk factors of suicidal behavior, and higher frequency of NSSI has been correlated with a suicidal attempt at one point of time. It has been found that around as high as 64% of children, the adolescent having a suicidal behavior reports NSSI at least in one point of time. And sometimes the adolescent will adopt a intermediary, method like NSSI to just get rid of overwhelming suicidal thoughts also. And one is there are two common risk factors like depression and low self-esteem between suicide and NSSI. How do you differentiate whether it is a suicidal attempt or NSSI? Usually the suicidal attempt is more severe and life-threatening because there is an intention of self-death behind it, and it is usually preceded by a prolonged phase of helplessness, hopelessness, despair, worthlessness, while NSSI is usually a lightly inflicted self-injuries, and because there is no intention of death behind it, and it is usually impulsive. Now, what are the risk factors? Most common is familial problems, peer-related problems, school and academics, the lack of connectedness with the family, poor communication with the parents, lack of coping skills, right? And sometimes there is faulty parenting styles like authoritarian parenting style. These all make a lot of difference. Those who are victim of social, sexual, domestic, or abuse, so they all are, more likely to have NSSI behavioral pattern. There are a significant number, around 35 to 40% of them have psychiatric comorbidity, like depression, anxiety disorder, PTSD, substance use disorder, borderline personality disorder, eating disorder, CD, ODD. They all have been associated with NSSI. Those who have a developmental disability, especially spectrum, they are not able to express their feelings, and repetitive behavioral pattern is common in them. So these children are more likely to indulge into NSSI out of frustration, because the people around them don't understand. There is a limitation of expression, and people around them don't understand what they want to say. There is definitely a contagion effect. If there is a history of suicidal behavior or NSSI in the family, it increases the risk. But as high as 50% of these children do not have any diagnosable psychiatric problem. So we need to consider this as in a functional term rather than a diagnostic things. So these are the mental health problems, and depression leads the risk. Every NSSI has some function, some expectations behind it. Usually, it serves as a maladaptive short-term coping mechanism to stop or reduce the overwhelming emotional stress. But so it's a kind of cry for help when communication fails. But sometimes they do it as a part of self-punishment, like that boy was doing, cutting the abdominal skin. There is a very remarkable association between interpersonal communication gap sometimes and NSSI. So sometimes the adolescents do it for drawing the attention of the parents, and there is a small number of them may do it to escape the domestic duties as well. What are the signs? Of course, wearing long clothes in hot weather, being secretive, isolated, not talking much, wide emotional swings, they become snappy, irritable, anger outburst, and the mood swings typically last very long. One may find injurious objects in their personal belonging, like blade, matchbox, or a needle, etc. How do we approach this case? Again, HADS is a magic tool which gives us a stressor and risk factors, the triggers, family dysfunction, coping mechanisms, substance use disorder, or even the history of suicide ideation in them. History of childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences must be elicited. It is very important risk factor. Assessments are aimed at three things. One, screening for the suicidal behavior. Second, screening for the underlying psychiatric problem. And third, NSSI specific screening. So the suicidal behavior and mental health assessment tools are discussed are going to be discussed in a different session. So I will be focusing more on NSSI specific tools. So NSSI specific tools will help us identify the methodology of NSSI as well as the function behind it. There are two tools which are commonly used in India. One is DSHI, which is deliberate self-harm inventory. It's a 17-item self-report inventory which help us identify frequency, onset, duration, and last occurrence, and even type of the NSSI. But it doesn't help us find the functions behind NSSI, for which we have FASM. This is a very wonderful tool. It is used for research purpose. Even NIMHANS people have used it once or twice in their research. So it's again, it consists of two sections. One is a checklist of self-injury behaviors, the number of behaviors, and 22-item scale which is asking why do they indulge into NSSI. That indicates the function behind it. So that will help us identify the alternative soothing method to get out of NSSI. Management strategies is basically if the wound requires surgical treatment, we need to go ahead with that. Also, we need to treat underlying or associated psychiatric comorbidity. Unless we do this, we cannot get the results of therapy. Of course, behavioral intervention and psychoeducation therapy for the children and the family members is a very, very important thing. Regarding the behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy does wonders. Like in the case of Ruchi also, it was very effective. Here it is a evidence-based, teaches emotional regulation and distress tolerance. It will be discussed in detail tomorrow by Dr. Preeti. So I'm not going to detail into it. CBT definitely addresses the negative thought patterns. Some of the family therapy, especially making, sensitizing them regarding the problem and how to act when they find it and how to stay connected and make the environment safe are some of the important steps. Pharmacotherapy is aimed to treat the psychiatric comorbidity. There is no other role for NSSI. So what is the role of parent? When they find it, there should not be any panic, like, ye kya ho gaya, tumne ye kyun kar diya, shameful, this, that. No, it is very important to stay connected, stay calm, empathetic, non-judgmental listening, and questions which are non-threatening. To be asked, staying connected, making environment safe, giving them warmth and support and affection is very, very important. Of course, taking professional help is very important step to be taken by the parents. Now, we need to help adolescents inculcate certain healthier coping skills. For them, journaling, taking out their thoughts out of their mind is a very wonderful tool. Recreational activities, sports, physical exercise, breathing, box breathing, pranayam, progressive muscle relaxation, that gives them a very good instant relief to get away from the thought. Of course, talking is a wonderful tool. Talking to the parents, talking to a trustworthy adult and the friends is extremely important thing. And we need to help the adolescent in, evolve certain communication techniques also. Prognosis is favorable if early diagnosis, timely intervention, and treatment of underlying psychiatric disease. Of course, absence of psychiatric disease have a very good prognosis, while if there is a late diagnosis, no treatment, poor compliance to the behavioral therapies, and associated severe psychiatric problem have a poor prognostic value. So Ruchi, when came recently, she revealed that, even today, I sometimes feel inflicting those physical injuries to get away from emotional distress. But now I know that it's not going to solve my problem. So I have adapted certain healthier coping skills like journaling, making collage of the photographs of her father with the family. She has started engaging herself in philanthropic activity like donating her time to the underprivileged children, teaching them drawing and social studies. And
Ma'am, time's
this
up.
is a very effective therapy.
Excuse me,
She
ma'am.
feels that she is on the right path. So to conclude,
Excuse me, ma'am. Last 1 minute, ma'am, please. Yeah.
I'm last slide. So, to conclude, self-harm is a commonly observed phenomena in adolescent. We need to be extremely careful about it. The adolescent, adapt non-suicidal self-injury as a coping mechanism, and it's a cry for help. They need urgent attention and treatment. Our role is early identification, timely intervention, and screening for the suicidality and psychiatric problem. So thank you very much, friends, for patiently listening. And let us all help our adolescent cope up, involve, and, inculcate the coping skills. Thank you.
Thank you very much.